Hey, what's up, guys? I had a little request to do a little explanation on the pivots of a Balisong, so I figured I'd just take it into the entire anatomy of a Balisong. And this is for the guys, just starting out, hearing a bunch of terms they don't know, and this will help you out, just to know what all the experienced guys are talking about. Figured I'd hold the camera for this one instead of keeping it stationary, so I could really try to show you and get a better focus on everything. But I guess we'll start out with the pivot explanation for the friend of mine. Your Benchmade Balisongs are going to have your most simplistic pivot system. All it is a sex bolt system. And think about sex bolt, where you have a female and a male. And that's when you have the one side of the pivot, which is just flat, and that's your female side. And your male side is your Torx bit, whatever size it may be. On a Benchmade, they're 8s, sometimes 9s, most of the time 8. But you have your male screw that goes in, and that's your male side to the sex bolt. So that's going to leave you with a little bit of play, but if everything's nice and tight, it should be pretty good. Now that would be on your 40 series and your 51s. Now a lot of guys see the 60 series and they see that they have what looks like screws on both sides. Now you can see what I'm holding here is a female sex bolt system, but it has a Torx end on it here, which it's what it looks like is there's a center pivot and there's 2 screws on either side, but it's actually not. It's just a sex bolt construction with a Torx bit on the end. So I guess you can hold it still if it were ever to spin on you. It's a lot easier to service than a 40 series, because you can see the 40 series and the 51, I can't really get a good focus here, but it's splined right here. They're press fit in. So to get your blade out, you're going to have to tap these out. Well, with a 60 series, since it's not splined or press fit, these will slide right out, so you can get your blade out much easier on a 60 series. And you can hold your pivot still if it is spinning on you. But normally just squeezing the knife will stop that pivot from squeezing. So the guys that think that there's actually 2 screws on each pivot on a 60 series, that's actually incorrect. It's still a sex bolt, just like a 40 series, but you just have a Torx head on there. Next up will probably be the Microtech system. And now these are the Benchmades have 3/16 pivots with I believe it's 6x32 threads with the number 8 Torx bit. But those are really hard to find because all the screws that you find that are 6x32 have a big 1/4-inch head. Now the head on the 40 series is smaller, so they're very hard to find. But like the Microtechs, you have the same 3/16 pivot, but you have the big 1/4-inch heads on them. And the big difference between the Microtech is it's a bushing system. Now, here's your bushing, which is much, much longer than what's actually in the knife. And here's a Microtech Tachyon right here. This is the knife I'm talking about. But it has a bushing, and see if I can do this with one hand and still show you. But you have your bushing, and your pivot, which is right here, with your 1/4-inch head, is going to slide in to the bushing, and that's what's going to spin instead of the knife blade spinning on your 3/16 pivot like the Benchmade. This actually goes in between the pivot and the hole in the knife blade, so that's going to take up a lot of friction, and that's going to reduce play a whole bunch, which is why in a bushing system knife you can almost tighten it all the way, because the bushing is taking the stress, is holding everything together, so you're squeezing here, so your blade's not going to bind up. Whereas Benchmade has no bushing, so when you squeeze everything together, you're squeezing those handle scales onto the blade. You would be squeezing the whole setup, and that's going to bind you up. Whereas the bushing system, you're squeezing the ends of your bushing, and the knife blade and the scales still have that little bit of free play in them, so everything's going to still have that smooth action. Like my replicant, this is tightened as tight as it will go, and it's still super smooth. It's also very broken in. I know sometimes a new knife, even if it has bushings, it still needs a little bit of a break-in period. But as you can see, the Microtech with the bushing system, just like the Replicant, crazy smooth with barely any play at all. That's all I'm getting. But your Benchmade with your typical bushings, your typical pivots, is going to get a little bit more play. And that's the same with an Alpha Beast, but the little bit of difference with the Alpha Beast is you have very small pivots, 0.125 pivots inside of a 3/16 bushing. So it's a much smaller setup. You can see the size of the screw difference here. So what that does is, since everything's a little bit smaller, flipping and impact is going to stress it a little more, so your Alpha Beast is going to end up developing a little bit of play to it, just because that those smaller parts are going to take more stress. Now, from what I hear, the Alpha Beast 3 is going to have Replicant hardware. You can see how much bigger the Replicant hardware is, because the Replicant has the same Microtech, those big giant screws with the big 1/4-inch bushing, 3/16 pivot inside of a 1/4-inch bushing. So the new Alpha Beast 3 should be along the same lines of play as a Replicant, which is next to none. And this Replicant is a daily flipper. Super smooth, barely any play whatsoever. So that's basically the pivots that you're going to run into. I know mainly flippers really aren't down with the bearing system. I mean, the bearings I see more on collector's knives and stuff like that. But mainly, if you're going to be flipping, you're going to be looking at one of these types of pivots. Either your Benchmade 3/16 with no bushing, or your 3/16 inside of a 1/4-inch with the bushing, which is my preferred. That right now, that's the best pivot out, in my opinion. And the Alpha Beast 1 and 2 are kind of the odd one out with those little tiny bushing systems. But what you're going to find in all these knives, except for some of your Benchmades, are phosphorus bronze washers, which you can buy at say USA, Knife Maker, KnifeKits.com, places like that. But some Benchmades you're going to find the stainless steel. But the reason why they're using this phosphorus bronze type of washer is because from what I hear, that they have a self-lubricating type of property. They're just more slippery, but they do wear out a little bit faster, which is why I think on the 60 series Benchmades, because they're heavier, they use those stainless steel, because stainless steel is going to wear less, but it's not going to have that super slick property. So if you ever do have to change washers on your Balisong, be sure to get some calipers and measure what you take out, and make sure you purchase the right thickness for your new ones. Now, the reason you may be buying new ones is because the ones that you had have worn thin. So see what you have with yours, see how much play you have, see, you know what I mean, see what sizes are available, and you can probably estimate what it was stock. Other parts of the Balisong, like you're going to see these bottom pivots a lot here, your handle pivots. That's basically this right here. It's really the same thing the Alpha Beast uses as a blade pivot. It's like I said, 0.125. The screw threads are 2x56, I believe. Really tiny, and the Torx bit is like a number 6. But out of everything I've had to replace on a Balisong, or things that have gone wrong or stripped, it's been these. And these are about $3 a pop on USA Knife Maker. But that's a lot better than sending your knife in. Say you can't get one of these screws out. I've heard on many occasions on Replicants, any knife really, Benchmades, that guys will either have a spinning screw, or something will happen where they strip the Torx and they just can't get it out. I've had to drill out these on probably 4 different occasions, and I think it was on 51s. But all you have to do, buy a couple of these. I ended up reshaping this squared out top here just by putting it in a Dremel and turning it. But that's what you're going to use to replace those, is the .125 pivots. Sex bolt, same thing. Remember, female side with the male screw. Other parts of your balisong, I mean, of course, you have your handles, your blade, your horns. Some guys don't mind the horns. I personally can take or leave them, unless it's they're really big. Like, they were really big on the tachyon, so I took them off. You hear the term crown spine. That's going to be, you see how sharp these edges are? A crown spine is going to be like your replicant with a nice rounded spine. So when you're flipping and it's crashing into your fingers, it's a little more comfortable. This is going to be a sandwich construction knife. You see, I can see all the way through it. Those are sandwich handles. And these are channel handles. You can see you have that one solid side. A channel was machined into, well, these are actually cast, but a channel is in the knife, so thus your term channel construction. But not too many channel ballies out now, unless you're getting a 29 or something like that. So mostly what you're going to find is sandwich construction knives, even on the very, very high-end ones like the Alpha Beast, your best flippers in the world. Another thing to talk about is Zen pins and tang pins. On your channel construction knife, you're going to have a single tang pin. You can see right there, peeking at you. Single tang pin in your tang cups, and that's what's stopping the knife, stopping the blade from flopping all the way over on you, and that's what's going to keep your handles apart. That tang pin is responsible for taking all the abuse that you put your handles through. All that noise that you hear is those handles crashing on that tang pin, which is why sometimes tang pins will get loose and will have to be serviced, especially in my experience on a Benchmade, because you have, I've said this time and time again, you guys that have seen my videos are probably getting tired of it, but you have round tang pins in square tang cups, and I just think that's stupid. You see on these other knives that have less tang pin problems, round tang pin in a round cup. Same with the Alpha Beast, round tang pin in a round cup. You're going to have less problems. You're not going to get flat spots. The tang pin's not going to deform. And you can see on a channel bally, you have one tang pin, because when you close the knife, you're using the kicker here is going to sit on the inside of those channels. Now, with a tang pin knife on a sandwich construction, there's no channel for it to sit on, so you're going to have another top pin here to keep your handles separated. So that's when you have your dual tang pins. Your Zen pins are in the handles. Your two, same thing almost as these bottom pivots here, is pivots in the handles which rest on this notch in the blade, this little nipple in the blade here, and you can see inside, well, the replicant's probably easier to see. There you go. You can see that pin right there will rest on that little notch, and that's what's stopping you. Now, these are much more dependable. These are going to break less. They are serviceable, much more easily serviced than a tang pin, which you're going to have to press. You're going to have to send out most of the time unless you have the proper tools to do it. A tang pin or Zen pins are just pivots. Most of the time they're double-ended pivots, so they're not sex bolts. They are the pivot with the two screws on either side. But either way, they're serviceable. On the 41, they're actually just plain old pivots. You can see right there. But to me, they're much more dependable. The distance of your handles isn't going to change because those aren't going to get crushed like a tang pin is on a Benchmade. Now, see, my Alpha Beast and Microtech haven't been crushed or anything like that. But I prefer tang pins a lot. I mean, Zen pins a lot more. But what you will find is it kind of makes sense when you look at it. Your Zen pin is almost like your fulcrum here, and with all that pressure coming down when you're flipping, it's going to have a little bit of a bounce to it. Now, it's less prominent on a channel construction knife, but you really don't find a lot of channel Zen pin knives. But say on the replicant, you can kind of hear it. You can hear that bounce. So Zen pin knives are a little bit bouncy, but the payoff is they're going to last forever. You're never going to have to worry about your Zen pins. What else do I want to talk about? I mean, yeah, your latches. You know, you got your spring latch on your 40 series, but other than that, as you can see, I use lanyard latches, which I found to be pretty cool. Well, even you can see my little car there. That's my daily driver, no biggie, BMW. You could see even a latch my knife for me, but that's just something fun I've been doing. Spacers, almost forgot about spacers. On your sandwich construction knives, you're going to need something to keep those handles apart at the bottom. Now, some knives use barrel spacers, like the Tachyon, which is really one of the only ones. They come stock with aluminum barrel spacers. Some of them come stock with the block spacers, but when you hear the term barrel spacers, this is what they're talking about. You see the circular shaped barrel. And most of your sandwich knives are going to come with these block spacers. You can see here. And on a neutral flipper, if you've watched my last video, those spacers are going to be less significant in weight. So you're going to have to add the momentum to your rollovers. On a knife with nice, big, beefy spacers, it's going to let you carry the knife over much better. So, in my opinion, I like the block spacers much better because they're much more substantial than these little tiny guys. So you do get a better rollover. The knife carries better, in my opinion. Now, I'm biased because my flipping style, the weight in the rear just suits me better. If you're the kind of guy who really likes the 42, you may like the Tachyon with the barrel spacers, the little light guys. As you can see, guys, I'm a big believer in buying spare parts. Like I said, get yourself a set of calipers and measure everything and try to find absolutely everything. That's what I did. I went through, I had screws for every possible situation where I could lose one. I have pivots for every possible situation I could lose one. I even have, you can see these are socket screws just for this knife and my other Tachyon. I have a bag of 100 of these just in case that I lose them. It was $5 for a bag of 100. You'd be crazy not to get them because these things go flying out, and a lot of times you're going to have to send, especially with Microtech, you're going to have to send your knife back to Microtech to get 2 screws put back in. And to me, that's ridiculous when I can wait a couple days, pay $5, and be able to replace them for the rest of the knife's life. Hopefully that clears some things up. If you guys have any more questions, I missed anything, or if anything was incorrect, please leave a note in the comments. Hope this helped you out a little bit, at least for my buddy to explain the pivots. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Have a good one.